Welcome to the Crossroadz, the show where we provide you the tools to unlock your greatest creative, purpose-driven life. I'm here with a very special guest today. His name is Huang, founder of Milli Agency, organizer of Reign Supreme, and organizer of Massive Monkees, b-boy, all around, very well-rounded human individual. Nice to meet you, Mike. Good to finally have you on this show, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for having me, Kai. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, bro. It's been a while. It's been a long time coming because I know about you through mutuals. I don't think I've ever gotten to personally talk to you. Even while we've both been affiliated, working with stands for the last few years, been in the breaking scene. I've always seen you kind of through other friends. And something I think the big reason and the reason why we're talking right now is because we finally got to connect on Clubhouse. So that app is a whole nother topic that I'd love to touch on because that is crazy. I'm sure you agree with that. But
yeah, Clubhouse is wild, man.
It's pretty wild, man. Yeah. And I think it was so cool how we were finally able to connect, but also hearing your voice really kind of sealed the deal where I'd already known you as this founder of your own agency and also a b-boy. There's not many people who have that cross pathway that you have. So I think what I want to ask you first is what is the story behind marketing? How did that kind of get into your realm? And can you take us from there?
Yeah. Wow. Where to start there? So marketing and business was never like a dream of mine or anything. I wasn't like, yeah, I'm going to be a marketer when I was a kid or anything like that. It wasn't until college that I kind of found marketing to be kind of like the path forward for me career-wise. I guess I would say it kind of started with breaking. In high school, I started breaking with my my classmates and the people that were breaking at my school, like a lot of people do, just saw them during lunch and then joined in. And, we started competing, we started traveling. We can get into that story later. But when I ended up at university, at the University of Washington, I was like still really into breaking, right? I was, a young guy and, I don't think I was ever really like convinced that I was going to maybe be like a professional b-boy. But what I knew was that like, I just loved breaking and it was like everything to me. And it was like how I met people. It was how I got girlfriends. It was everything, right? And so I was like, I don't want to join any of these clubs on campus. I don't want to join Taiwanese Student Association. I don't want to join like the hip hop dance group, like I'm a b-boy, right? And so I was like, what about a hip hop club? There's 50,000 kids on campus here at University of Washington. It's a big school. There's got to be like a real hip hop club. Where are the rappers at? Where are the graffiti artists at?
Right.
And there was none. There was a bunch before, and like much respect to the history and those who were before me. But at the time I went to school, there wasn't a club for real hip hop like culture. So I went and founded it. Like I started it with a couple of my friends. And in doing that, I think I just like inadvertently stumbled across like, I would first call it community organizing. And then this was the time where Facebook was really big. Like it just introduced group pages and, Twitter and Instagram didn't exist yet. So this was like, I was like using Facebook to like set up meetings and organize like, meetups with like, practices and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, what I was doing was inadvertently marketing, right? Like I was building community, I was organizing, and, we were like, me and my friends were like making flyers and handing them out on campus and trying to get people to show up to our general meeting and recruiting people. And then I somehow got a really great, like a huge opportunity, which was the Red Bull marketing internship on my campus.
Okay.
And like at that time, not only was Red Bull known for being like the like guerrilla marketing company, like no one else was doing what they were doing, like brand ambassadors, which you see now on Instagram everywhere, was not a thing. Like Red Bull was the first one to really do it, right? To have like students on campus repping a brand, right? So there was only one per campus. So it was really hard to get the job, and you get it and you get 4 years, right? It's like being the president, So I got lucky, and I was like, man, all the people before me were frat boys, and they liked action sports, and like wearing Oakleys. But I got lucky because the manager, she was a DJ, and she like grew up in the south end of Seattle, where like a lot of like Massive Monkees is from. And so she was like, yo, I love your resume. You're doing hip hop. We need one of those in our larger team. And so I got lucky. I got hired. And then all of a sudden I had resources to throw bigger events on campus.
Okay.
At the same time, I'll fly through this. At the same time, I met Joe Rock and I met Just Rock. Just Rock had been in LA throwing claws out, and he ran his breaking club at Loyola Marymount University. And he moved up with his parents after graduating to Seattle. Joe Rock was like, big bro in the scene here. He was throwing Massive Monkey Day at UW actually at the time. And so I reached out. I think this is a big lesson for me is I started asking questions. I asked for mentorship. Joe Rock gladly took me under his wing. Just Rock, who was not that much older than me, but just had graduated, was like, yo, yeah, I'll help you out. And so
do you mind if I ask a question on that? Do you remember exactly how you asked for mentorship? Like, how did the relationship begin? And then how did it eventually end up to where it was?
Yeah. I don't know the exact words or setting, but for Just Rock, I met him at practice, and then I took him out to party and we bonded over partying. And then we got to know each other. And then I was like, yo, I'm starting my own hip hop club. I would love your advice. Right. And shout out to Just Rock, because he's just such a like generous person, and like super cool, and like, no ego, that kind of guy. And he was like, oh, hell yeah, I want to help you, and not only that, did he not help me, he like came to all the events and co-hosted with me and co-organized for a lot of my first jams. Joe Rock, I think that was a little different. And again, shout out to Joe, because he was so approachable, because, like, imagine me, I'm like a 19-year-old kid breaking for a couple of years, and I'm trying to talk to Massive Monkey world champion guys that are, in their 30s. Like, there's some guys in the crew that didn't pay me no mind. Joe Rock was like, yo, like, you're on campus. Like, I think he saw the opportunity. It was like he could connect with younger audience that could help him promote. It was a beginning of a long relationship with Joe Rock, right? I eventually then became an organizer for Massive Monkey Day. But really, I just reached out to Joe. I was like, Joe, I'm here on campus. You're throwing Massive Monkey Day. How can I help you? Right? And then he, of course, recognized that me coming to him to support him was an opportunity for him to support me. So right off the bat, it was like a mutual relationship in that sense. And it grew to be a really dope friendship. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And I think it makes a lot of sense, because what you did was you offered what value you could from your end, and I think that's something that I definitely struggle with and like thinking of, but younger people as well. It's like when they're approaching older or more esteemed figures, it's like you want to ask for their help, but you forget that you can offer them something. I think it's just that it's the matter of finding that thing that you can offer them. Like for you, for example, it's like you had a platform to younger people. So that's
sometimes, and sometimes it's not even about having something to offer necessarily. It's just about connecting with someone and say, how can I help you? And they're like, maybe they're like, I don't know, how can you help me? And like, well, let's get to know each other. Let me tell you about what I do. So sometimes it's not, you don't even have to like, I hate getting caught up in the feeling of thinking like, all right, what do I got? What do I got to give? Like, what can I hook someone up with? Like that's also sometimes a challenging way of thinking, right? Because like, then you make everything transactional. But like, I think the dope thing was that me offering that to Joe, obviously there was a lot to offer, but even him being older than me, knowing more than me, recognized a lot of things in me that I didn't know, right? Like he was like, in his head, he was like, oh yeah, this is a great opportunity to connect with a young person out of my generation, to learn from him, So I think it's just finding those people and connecting with them that have those values, because you'll know right off the bat if someone's like, I just want something that you can give me, or, oh man, like I recognize this could be an awesome relationship, right? Those are the people you want to work with.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. That's actually super helpful to hear out loud. Okay. I'll remember that for sure. Just the idea of, it's not always transactional. It's more of just like getting to know the person and understanding if you want to help them truly, right? So, okay.
Right. Or like, let's just be real. Like, everyone wants to mentor someone. Everyone loves talking about themselves and passing on the torch. And, like, it's at the end of the day, it's about connection, right? Like, anyone who's older than you or more experienced than you will ultimately want to still talk to somebody who's less experienced, because it's an intrinsic human thing to want to like help and pass the torch and feel like, you're helping the next generation of you, right? It's kind of like being a parent. It's like, it's the same thing. So those are human feelings. So you can always remember that, like, and if you ever get a feeling like somebody, is only talking to you because you have something to offer, right? Like, you got to get out of that relationship quick, no matter what it is, whether it's mentorship or romantic or friendship, right? Like, you never want to be in a situation like that.
No, yeah, you definitely
that's
don't.
a different topic.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, for marketing, I wanted to finish my story, right? Like,
yes, please.
So I ended up throwing Claws Out Northwest. It was my first jam. Joe Rock helped me out. Just Rock helped me out. He was my co-host. And that just launched me into a whole new world, right? Like, now I was working for Red Bull. I was throwing jams. People started knowing me. I went from like just another kid at the battles to, oh shit, like Mikeskee, the new promoter in town. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that pushed me into a different like space within breaking. It made me feel really empowered to be like a community organizer. But also, like, at the flip side, like literally like a week after Claws Out, which was won by Cha Cha and Jalen. Jalen went on Ellen, and the footage from my jam got shown on Ellen. Again, this is before Instagram, and this is me going viral. Like, and in Red Bull, everyone in like national program was like, oh my God, this new SBM, which is student brand manager, like in his like first activation got featured on Ellen, like, props, right?
Yeah.
And so it made me like realize that I had a future maybe in marketing, and that I could. This is the first time I felt like my world of breaking and my world of like being a student and having a career like came together, and in a way that wasn't just like, oh, that works, but like, oh shit, that's dope, right? So for me, that was like me, all right, I'm going to business school. And I applied to business school. I graduated from business school. I worked for Red Bull until I graduated, threw a lot more jams. And then when I graduated, this was a crazy time too. It was like 2010 and the recession. There was a recession at that time because of the housing market. And so it was really hard for me to find a job. And I like kind of wandered through like being like a social media marketer for like random companies until I got lucky and landed with an advertising agency. And that's where like my journey with advertising and marketing kind of really, really went to the next level. So I owe it all to breaking.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. Well, touching on that then, what do you think it was about breaking that gave you, and this is like looking backwards, but what do you think it was about breaking that gave you maybe an edge over your average marketing mind or SBM, as you say, right? Because most of the time they're hiring athletes and such. And for some reason, they put you in these shoes and you managed to land you managed to make it work, right? You managed to get a mentor, and then you managed to go viral in that sense, right? So if you had to look at breaking, and maybe it doesn't have to be strictly breaking, but let's look at breaking for now, just to keep it within the confines. What do you think it is about it that gives anyone who practices the art that advantage?
Honestly, it has very little to do with the art, and it's more about the community.
Okay.
Of course, there's like the factors of like, breaking is a great spectacle, right? Like people love to watch it even if you're outside of it, and that's intrinsic. It's art, right? It's beautiful. And also, it really worked out that Red Bull, is the only company, especially at that time, invested in breaking. So me being a b-boy, and then Red Bull, it was like a match made in heaven, right? So it's a perfect brand, right? Like, it's not like I was able to figure out how to get, Patagonia to care about breaking. So I think, that fit really works. And I think that goes again to my theme of like, find those relationships that make sense, right? It's not all about relationships. You go to LA, everyone's like, you got to meet everyone, you got to network. but like I'm more of like in the middle where I'm like, you want to meet the right people. You want to meet the people that make sense to meet. You know, you only got so much energy and so much time in the world, right? And so like if I had gotten a different internship, my life probably would have been very different. So I'm really happy I got to work for Red Bull, right? Because that was the perfect fit for me. That being said, for breaking, I think breaking is just like everything it's taught me, right? And I think anyone who b-boys or b-girls or has danced or been a part of a subculture understands the value in not just the act of doing it, but the community, right? Like I like to say to people, like, since I've started breaking, I feel like I've gotten a membership to a worldwide secret society. Any country I go to, if I don't speak the language, all I have to do is go on Facebook and be like, hey, does anyone know anyone in Iceland that breaks? And they'll introduce me like, hey, oh yeah, my boy over there does this. You can go to practice. You can go sleep on their couch, right? I traveled the world at an early age because of that. I got reconnected with my own culture. I went to Taiwan and joined a crew and learned my language and spoke it more fluently because of that. You know, so I think what makes breaking amazing is that it is just like this perfect balance of being worldwide but still underground, so that like you feel this like real sense of community. It's like a real community, you know what I mean? Like skating is a community, but it's so big, right? Like other things are huge. Like, you know, the content creator community is a community, but you know, you're a content creator, Kai, like you don't know everyone and the relationships aren't super deep, right? Like all the time, maybe with a few, but like breaking, like you can, I feel like I'm instantaneously family with anyone else who's been breaking, no matter what, even if we can't speak the same language, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's the beauty to me, and that's what makes it work. And that's what I think the smart marketers, like people at Red Bull, recognize too, as what they wanted to be a part of.
Right. Okay. I want to touch on something you mentioned, which is your travel to Taiwan.
Yeah.
So we'll go back to that because I think that's going to be another topic, but I do want to also hear, so we heard about your journey for how kind of your involvement in breaking and community influenced you to get into the marketing space.
Yep.
And I think a really big story I do want to hear from your own mouth is how Milli became a thing. Because I was looking back at your Instagram posts and I've noticed it didn't just pop up overnight. It's been something you've been grinding at. And so I'd love to hear the story, man. Like, yeah, take us through the journey. Tell us how you've gotten to where you are now.
Yeah, man. So 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I was living in New York City, working at a big ad agency. I ended my earlier story with, you know, I joined the advertising world. I finished up like my work at a big agency in Seattle. You know, I was working on like, you know, Nike and Microsoft's and all those big brands, right? Doing social media strategy. And I got an opportunity to move to New York to an even bigger agency. And so I took it. I mean, who wouldn't? Job in hand, go to New York City. That's great. Mm-hmm. So I went and lived in New York City. And it was crazy, man. Like, I think anyone who's ever lived in New York City or been to New York City you can get a sense of like how, you know, how wild it is. And I was like, you know, early 20s. And so I worked at this big agency, ended up working on the United Airlines rebrand. I was like the lead social strategist. So we got to work with like the New York Symphony and like Matt Damon. And it was just like this crazy campaign. And around that time, my father had passed away. And so I was having this kind of life moment, right? Like quarter life crisis, if you want to call it. But my father passing away after working his butt off his whole life to provide for us, and me kind of burning out in New York City, working like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day, and not being super happy, made me realize like, and also at the same time moonlighting and still trying to be a part of the breaking community, like throwing jams in Seattle, like I was tired. And I was like, I don't know if this is sustainable. I don't know if this is the life I want to live, right? Sorry, my dog's like drinking water right now.
It's all good. Can't hear it.
So at that point, I quit. I just quit, and it scared the shit out of my mom, who, you know, an Asian mom, was like, "What? You quitting your job? Like, that's crazy." I quit, and I was like, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to burn out. I don't want to make the same mistakes my father made, and like in like overworking himself to death, just to work, right? Like, why am I doing this? I can't even enjoy the things I want to. I can't go to practice because I'm working so late, and so I quit, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I started just hitting out homies. Hey, can I help you out? Can I help out your business? What can I do? Same thing I did, when I got the Red Bull job. Like, how can I help you, right? And that led to some great relationships early on. That led to some client work, to paid work. And so I didn't really mean to start an agency. I was just freelancing. And then I came across a moment where I was like, oh shit, like I'm getting a lot of work and it's more than I can handle myself. And I can either make the choice of saying no and just keeping it chill, or I could make this a thing and hire a friend or hire some help. And that's what I did. And I started by hiring other dancers that were designers, other dancers that were, so the first couple of hires I had was a DJ that was like, he's like the cousin of Tim the Pit from Massive Monkees. He was like working in hotels, so he wanted to get into marketing. So I hired him as my hit assistant. And then I hired my crewmate who was a designer in college. And then like I later on hired a rapper that I used to manage who was trying to get into design. So again, like the hip hop community was like a big reason why I was able to start Milli. And then yeah, fast forward 6 years later, we're still here and we're still doing it. Like half my employees are people I've met through hip hop somehow. I remember I interviewed one of my recent employees, and he was like, in his interview, he was like, yeah, I was the president of the UW Hip Hop Student Association. I was like, I founded that, right? And it's crazy. He had no idea. And it was just like, whoa, that's wild, right? And like to this day, he's like a great mentee of mine and a great homie. And yeah, so that's like the high level story of how Milli happened. But yeah, like, after the first couple of years, we were doing client work for small businesses and helping out. And then we were also throwing jams under the Milli banner, right? Like we were using our resources there. And like, that was the first, I was like, oh wow, like I can like, get all my flyers done. I can get all my pre-producing. I can do it all at the same time while I'm also earning money. And, and then, so that continued to evolve. And then to this day, like it's continued to evolve. Like we're 6 years in, and like half of our work is working for like big corporations and brands and businesses. And then half of our work is still community oriented, but like even leveling up there, like we're working with the city of Seattle to produce, really, really compelling programs and initiatives. We've helped out with the COVID-19 prevention campaign for University of Washington. So it's crazy to see everything go for full circle. And even though even though things have changed, like I'm not the same guy as before, or the things I'm doing aren't the same. Like I'm still working with Red Bull, right? I'm not working for them, but they're a client now. So it's like, all these things have stayed kind of true to their core values. And Milli, to me, is just an extension of what I've learned and what I've done, which has to me been really unique. And then me turning that into a brand, and maybe something that even if I were to pass away, God forbid, or retire, like that can remain, right? Just like UW Hip Hop Association still exists. Like those are my legacies. And also those are values, right? That I hope that even if my name gets forgotten, like those remain for the people who get to experience them in the future.
100%, man. I love how you put it like that, because I think that's a big thing. Is something I've been deliberating a lot is like as a creator, right? Like a lot of the times when you're creating as I don't know if you want to call it influencer or whatever, you're often the face of your brand, right? But then what happens if something happens to you, like I think that's a big reason why the Crossroadz was an idea that I wanted to start, is just in case, just in case you want to move on, just in case you have to move on without your control. So yeah. I did want to ask you a question about establishing something like that. So you mentioned you started hiring friends, right? That's kind of like the first step. So how was that for you? I guess like, what was that kind of taking a step back to take the position of, I guess you could say, the commander, the general? Was that new to you? Was that something that you had to learn? Because I'm not sure what your previous roles were in your agencies or whatever, but I know a big symptom of artists or individuals who want to start something beyond themselves is that you have to learn how to manage, right? And you have to learn how to delegate. So, I mean, do you have any words of wisdom or lessons or stories that you have to share about your journey into becoming what is now the founder and the executive?
Yeah, man, that could be a whole podcast on its own. So I'll start with by saying this: I my experience up until when I started Milli uh, had, at least professionally in the agency world, was very limited in terms of management. I didn't have a team to manage. In fact, the most of the time what I was trying to do was fend for myself in like, I don't know if you've seen Mad Men, and for your listeners, those who do get it, like it's obviously a lot different from the 1950s, but or 60s, but there's a lot of elements to Mad Men that are still true to this day. Like the advertising agency world is a very specific beast, and the culture and the way that people behave in an advertising agency, like a high caliber one, is a very specific flavor of culture. And for most of my time in the ad agency world, and this is a big reason why I left it, was it was a lot of me focusing not on my work or my relationships even, but more so like trying to fit in, trying to make sure people liked me, trying to make sure I was on the right side of it. It was very Game of Thrones, right? And also as a person of color and somebody who has like a background in like hip hop, right? Like I didn't relate. A lot of people that, I got a lot of the breakdancing, oh, you want to spin on your head right now, that kind of stuff, right? And so I was really, really distracted by all that. And so it wasn't until, I left that I realized that, oh shit, like those aren't the things that I need to be worried about. I can actually then be focused on being a leader, right? Which isn't not only a thing that like I cared about, but I genuinely wanted to like build as a skill for myself, right? Having mentors like Joe Rock, having been close to the leaders in the breaking community. And also because and again, this was a discovery I made later, that I was a natural leader because of like what I did with UW Hip Hop Student Association. Like I started that group by myself and built it into like a massive network on campus, and I never really gave myself credit for that. Like, and not only that, I did the one thing that the other hip hop clubs before me, again, much respect to them, didn't do, which was before I graduated and even after I graduated, I made sure that it would live on beyond me, right? And that to me was like the key thing. And again, a big lesson I learned from mentors, Joe Rock, people, that like, this isn't about you, it's not about you. And like, that sounds like kumbaya, but it really isn't, because like, as soon as you see things not being just about you, you open up a whole new world of opportunities, of experiences, and happiness for yourself. And UW Hip Hop Association continues on without me. And to me, that's my biggest like lesson as a leader, is that it's not about you. And as soon as you can learn that leadership is about service, it's about giving, it's about what you can offer, it's about empathy, it's about other people, that is where you then can really shine, right? Like we look at hustle culture, we look at big companies, and a lot of times the leadership mentality is built around big ideas, good ideas, being motivator, being cutthroat, hiring slow, firing fast, Gary V, all that stuff. But whatever, you can take all that, you can like what you like, but at the end of the day, for you to be an effective leader, you have to be empathetic. And you could be an effective leader for a certain amount of time, like Steve Jobs or something. But if you end up not being empathetic and you hurt other people when doing that, you get kicked out of your own company. That's what happens, right? So not to tarnish Steve Jobs, he's obviously an amazing leader, but he learned later on that lesson. So all that to being said, like when I became a manager, and obviously like in the beginning, I was not a good leader. And still to this day, I'm not a good leader in my eyes. I'm learning. But I think that's the key for me that I remember every day, is that I'm willing to do this, that I'm leaning into it, that I'm willing to apologize to my employees and my staff when I make a mistake, you know, or if I get upset in a meeting, or if I unfairly treat somebody, like, you know, in a managerial setting, right? I have the humility and the perspective of leadership, of going, this is not about me. This is not about me being upset. It's not about my emotions. It's not even about the fact that this is my company, right? That's not the point. The point is, and here's the main reason, is that after everything I experienced with starting my own club instead of joining one, all the way to working in a big advertising agency that I thought was really dope, but realizing that it was kind of not what I expected, was that the world doesn't need another dope company or another dope jam or another dope group or another dope leader even. The world just needs great places for people to exist. And for Milli and for me, like, on the days I feel like we're not doing the most incredible work or the most inspiring work, I remember that what I'm creating at Milli isn't just a dope agency. It's a dope place to work for people like me, for people that don't feel like they would fit in at a bigger company, for people that maybe have different backgrounds, that don't want to be distracted by corporate politics or be only surrounded by one type of person or one race, right? All those kind of values. And so leadership, at the end of the day, managerial style, like, those are like the day-to-day, those are things I go to therapy about, I read books on, like everyone else, right? I learn, I ask questions, I look to mentors, I get better, right? Just like you have a dog or you have a family, it's just that's normal. But the larger perspective, the North Star, is the most important thing. And to me, that's making sure that I realize every day and I remember that this is not about me, it's about them. How can I serve the people in my community? And my community in my work setting is my employees, my staff. How can I serve them better?
Right. Yeah. It's super powerful. You mentioned empathy, and I think that's something that, like you said, as a natural leader, that is something that I think is one of those big important traits. But like you also said, you're still learning, and you're continuing to learn, and you've made mistakes, and you weren't the best leader at the beginning. So if that's the case, then what do you think? How do you think you developed empathy? Was that something that was valuable? Was it a valuable trait growing up, or was it something that um, you had to learn a hard lesson to get to that point?
Yeah, man. I mean, empathy comes from, like, I think empathy comes from, I'm not a psychologist, but, like, it comes from struggle, really, the pain made me everything I am, right? I think I credit a lot of experiences in my life. Having a hard childhood, in terms of my family life, was part of it, feeling like I never fit in, being a person of color, being an Asian American, being a minority, growing up in neighborhoods where I wasn't people didn't look like me, growing up in, going to some rough schools early on in my life, getting in a lot of trouble early on, finding breaking teaching me the concept of diversity and culture at such an early age. I don't think, I think B-boys don't represent that side of our culture very well, is the fact that, like, a lot of us, like, have traveled the world at an age or at a time in our lives that really other people haven't. It really brings culture forward. So empathy to me is just like, it comes from those experiences. Those struggles are the fertilizer for how you grow. But like, I would say the main thing is this, right? Like, I grew up and I still struggle with, a lot of things that a lot of people struggle with, like identity, insecurities, anger. I was a really angry kid. Feeling invalidated, feeling like I wasn't good enough. Imagine being, like, I think for a lot of Asian Americans, it's like, if you're a dancer or even an artist or a creative, you feel judged by your parents, judged by your family, judged by your peers, judged by society. Like, oh, why aren't you a math guy or a doctor, right? And so I think it all comes back to the fact that like those experiences made me realize that, people really need to be understood. And a lot of my problems come from feeling like I've been misunderstood. And that's it, right? Like, and so like, to me, it's not about being perfect. Like, even this is still something I've only really grasped recently in my life, but it's like, the ability to lead, like move forward with empathy, right? Like, I'm not expecting myself to be like the perfect leader that is calm, cool, and collected in every meeting. And I used to, in the beginning, beat up myself when I would like, mess up, in a client meeting, or I would get upset at someone on the team and feel like crap because I did that. And then I would beat myself up over it, I'd shame myself. But now it's more like, no, I need to lean into my flaws. And I'll quickly gather the team and be like, hey guys, I yesterday was a rough meeting. There was bad energy there. I want to apologize to everyone, and I want to thank everyone for being patient. Like that's leadership. Leadership isn't being perfect and never getting upset or always being like saying the right things and making the right decisions. It's also about like real leadership is about being able to like recognize your flaws, having the humility to say you're wrong, know when you're wrong, to ask questions. You know what I mean? That's leadership. And with people like me, like people of color, people that come from not perfect backgrounds, like it's so important that we have that space for ourselves to understand and have that emotional agility to be able to go like, it's okay if I make mistakes. Like, me being okay with that is going to make me a better leader. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mike. Dropping that is going to be super important. And I know a lot of people, including myself, who needed to hear that. So I appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable enough to admit that as well. Like it is, I think that's something that, and I'm not just going to say that this is a thing I think it's something that we all experience, is that ego, right? Is having to overcome feeling like, it goes back to feeling like we have to have something to offer, or like that we have we're holding ourselves to the standard, and that in a lot of ways can censor us and actually do the opposite of what we want to do, which is connect and grow, right? So I do want to ask you something else. Coming from the world of breaking and the world of artistry, and being around your peers and seeing the way other people do these things, let's use breaking as the scope since this is a community we're both in. But I notice a big there's a lot of things that separate a successful leader slash business person from a artist. So what do you think, in your opinion, are the biggest mistakes the artists make that don't allow them to take that next step into leadership or into creating a livelihood for themselves?
Well, there's a lot there. I think one of the mistakes is that artists often make is that they don't set an intention around their art. Like, I just meet a lot of unintentional artists, and that's fine. Like, live your life, the way you want to, and stumble upon knowledge or experiences the way you want to. But I do firmly believe that with just a little intention, you could change the trajectory for a lot of creatives and artists, right? And what I mean by intention is this. When you ask artists, like, let me reel that back. When I ask artists, or when I talk to artists, it's not clear to me, most of the time it's not clear to me whether they want to do that for a living or not, right? Like, if you ask any artist, they're going to fumble that answer. Like, hey, is this what you want to do your whole life, right? Like, when I ask you right now, Kai, like, do you want to be a b-boy or a dancer like for your career?
Asking me?
Yeah.
No, I don't. If I had to give a direct answer, then yeah.
Right. So you kind of have some intention there, but I think when a lot of the artists I meet and a lot of dancers I meet, they're just like, yeah, I'm gonna try it out, I'm gonna explore it. And here's the thing, art, business, whatever it be, if you want to do something and you love that thing, you need to know your intent. You need to have a purpose around that. You need to know what your purpose of doing that. Like if you're going to create a career out of breaking or dancing or any art that you're doing, then that means you need to start to accept what all comes with doing a career, right? Doing that as a career.
Right.
You need to embrace the hustle. You need to learn about the financials. You need to be realistic with yourself about where you're living and if it makes sense to be doing that where you're living, right? Like that's the biggest mistake is like if like when I meet dancers and they're living in like a small town and they're teaching at their community center, these are all fine. Like if that's what you want to do, you want to teach and you want to be in your community, you want to build your community, dope. That should be your intention. Do that, right? But then they say something like, oh yeah, I want to like do this for the rest of my life as my career. I'm like, well, then what are you doing? Why don't you move to LA? Why don't you move to a bigger market? Why don't you get an agent? Why don't you post more content, right? Why don't you figure out how you're making money? So to me, it's like, and then like the reason why those questions for me come up is because I see a lot of complaining or anger or kind of like resentment, right? From artists later on feeling like they're not, you know, oh, they did all this work, but no one's recognizing them or they're not getting paid enough. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot there, right? There's a lot of issues with our financial system and capitalism and all that. But at the end of the day, like a lot of the problems come down to that mentality, right? Like you get it, like you're a content creator, you're doing all these different things and you're a dancer. Like you got to hustle, right? And you got to have that, you have to have that concept in your head, like what is your goal with that? If you want to treat it as a hobby and you don't want to make money out of it, great. Then just do it. You know, you could do it at home. You could do it in front of a mirror. It won't bother you, right? But if you want to make this your life, then you have to really, really have those hard conversations with yourself about what that means, right? Too often do I find people in the middle, like half-assing it, like, oh, I want to be a rapper. But yeah, you know, I'm just gonna like, you know, I'm just working on a couple of things and then maybe I'll just do some watercolor painting on the side. I'm like, whoa. If you want to be a rapper, then you need to be eating, drinking, sleeping it every day. And you need to be like thinking about what's your trajectory? How are you going to map out, like, how are you going to release your music over the next 5 years? Like, that's what I'm saying is like being an artist just to be an artist isn't enough to be an artist anymore. You have, if you want to be an artist as a career, there's a difference. There's a good analogy in the music industry, which is there's a difference between being an artist and making records, right? And there's nothing wrong with either. There's nothing wrong with being an artist. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I want to make records and make money. But you can't conflate the two. The two are not the same. Like you don't just make, you can't be an amazing rapper, like freestyle rapper with incredible talent that beats anyone in the cypher. And then also expect that your music that you record onto the albums are going to make money. There's a difference. It's a whole process. Same with breaking, right? Like you can't just be like a dope ass b-boy in the cypher winning jams in your city and then all of a sudden go, why am I not in Red Bull and like, you know, getting endorsements? Because it's a different trajectory. Like, let's be real about that, right? And like, you can't get mad at one or the other, right? Like if somebody's over here, like Morris, like building a dope following and really, really putting himself out there and traveling and pushing himself versus like underground, I'm here for the culture. Like both of those are great. Those are important pathways, but you have to have the intention. You can't get it mixed up in your head that one means the other. They don't equate. They're different paths. So to me, the biggest thing for artists in my perspective is early on, make the intention. For me, I chose early on in my life that I wasn't going to make money off of breaking. Instead, what I had to give to breaking was my ability to lead and organize and throw jams, you know? And then I would always do the dance, treat that as something that I love myself, as an outlet, as therapy, as a passion, as a place to be angry and let it all out and rock my dope gear. And that was it. I was never going to be like, yo, I need to make money off of it. And that allowed me to go and explore Milli and explore Red Bull and do all these other things, right? Because I wasn't just sitting here going, nah, but I want to break. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
So it's just intention. That's to me the biggest mistake, or not mistake, but biggest thing I think for artists to focus on.
That's huge, man. Especially because I think, like, I love how you laid it out, because it can be easy to get the two, even though they're different. It can be easy to not be able to see the differences between the two. So I appreciate you like really putting your foot down and like understand, like helping us understand that. So okay, we're closing up because I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I appreciate everything you've been dropping, bro. It's been bomb.
Yeah, man.
So,
I'm long-winded, so I have more time if you need it. If you want to record more, no worries.
For sure. We'll see where this goes. But I do have another question leading off this. Since you mentioned intention, it's so important. I don't think this can be answered. It cannot be answered in one question, and everybody has their own path when it comes to intention. But I do want to hear what you think, because I mean, you seem very like you've gone down your own road. So my question is, if you had to choose 3 resources to give to a college student on how they can solidify and find their intention, whether that be a practice or a book or a documentary, what would be those 3 things you'd give them to start?
Well, first is find a mentor. That's number 1, right? Like I have to say that because that's what I experienced. That's my lived experience. And to be quite honest, like I could tell you to read a book, but like most of the time, like I didn't read books in college. I mean, I read books that I had to read, but like you telling me to read a book that I didn't have to read, I ain't got time for that.
Everybody learns differently.
Jams and trying to go to practice and trying to party. So you know, there are books, and I think this generation is more open to books than mine was. But yeah, number 1 is find a mentor, find a good mentor, and really build with that person, right? That's so important. And remember that mentor, you know, be selective about who you invest in, because you know they can really mold and shape you. Any tips
on finding the right mentor, the one that aligns with you?
Yeah, I would say this, you know, if you don't have, like, obviously go with your gut, right? Like if you already know there's somebody in your community or somebody you kind of know of that you're like, I really just want to like connect with that person, you know, then go with that person, right? But what you should do, especially if you don't have that person already identified in your mind, is do informational interviews, right? Like hit up people that you look up to or you admire or you respect and be like, hey, can I buy you coffee? I just want to pick your brain. I just want to talk to you. I want to learn about it. And again, like I said, old guys like me, older people that have experience, love to talk about themselves. And especially if you're not trying to like ask for a job or trying to pitch something, you know, they're more than happy to go sit down and have their ego stroked. Let's be real. Let's keep it a buck, right? Even in this case, Kai, you asked me to be on your podcast. You know, the way you approached me is like, oh yeah, I want to talk about myself. Shit. You know, I'm sure it works for you, right? When you ask people to be on your podcast in that sense, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you were to be like, hey, can I get an hour of your time to help me with an idea that I'm working on? I might be like, well, shit, I got to charge you for that because that's my, you know, but like you asked me to talk about myself, cool. And so anyways, have interviews, sit down with people, take them out to coffee. You know what I mean? Be personable. And then it's just like dating, really. It's just like who you gravitate towards, who inspires you, who you have chemistry with, you know? That's really important, right? So that's my piece of advice. For the other like couple of different things, resources, it's actually the opposite of a resource. Is just like, so right now what I'm seeing a lot in the next Gen Z, those are in their 20s, is kind of like this oversaturation of like the internet, right? And content creators, everyone's a photographer, everyone's a business coach, right? Everyone's a life coach, right? There's a lot of advice, even right now, right? Like I'm just another person in the larger scheme of being on a podcast and telling people what they should do. And all I have to say to that is that like, that's great, but none of this substitutes for real life experiences. So just intake all this stuff, all this information with like a little bit of a grain of salt, you know, like take it all with a grain of salt. And remember, your lived experiences are the most important things. Figure out what you've been through personally that you can take forward into your practice, whatever it may be. That's the most important thing you can do for yourself, because all these formulas and these playbooks and like how to be successfuls and this book and Gary V's and Grant Cardone's and all that stuff, those are great best practices. But like coming from, let me tell you this, I work in a creative agency. Our whole world is built around taking best practices and making them unique. It's the most contradicting work we do, right? We think about strategy, we think about things that work, and then we break them and we remake them in a unique way for somebody else, for a different brand or an organization, right? And so that's what you need to do, is like take what you can from those who have done it before you or have done things that you like, and reverse engineer them, take it apart, figure out how it works. But remember that what makes you is not your ability to be Mega Man and learn from everyone else. It's what you've been through personally and how you take that into your work, right? And how you, so if I could talk to myself even in my 20s, I'd be like, yo, remember that. Like this sounds really philosophical, but like, what did you go through that you can add to the conversation of life, right? What do you bring to the table? What is your superpower? What makes you unique? And so anything around that, if you can spend time meditating on that, thinking about that, that's important.
Word. Definitely. That ties into striving for self-awareness for sure. Yes. So that's super, super important. I definitely took in that. Appreciate that, man. All right. Well, I mean, even if you don't have a third one, like those two are like incredible.
There's a lot of books, man. I really like, so one of my favorite books is The Four Agreements.
The Four Agreements.
It's dope. It's been around for a long time. It's based on Toltec wisdom, which is like old Aztec, cultures. Hopefully I'm not getting that wrong. But to me, like, it's not like a business book. It's like a self-help book before self-help books were popular. And to me, the Four Agreements, in the book, they lay out the Four Agreements, which are: be impeccable with your word. Number 2, don't take anything personally. Number 3, don't make assumptions. Number 4, always do your best. Those are really, really basic terms, but the way they break it down in that book, and it's a short read, changed my life. So Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, super important book, for sure.
Love to hear it, man. I think those two go in hand, especially those two you dropped ahead of time. Having a mentor and reading books can change your life, but it isn't until you actually go out and do things and apply those experiences that will allow you to synthesize and tie it all together. So that's super awesome, man. I think, I mean, it's about that
do the
time,
work.
bro.
Like, people just need to do the work, right? Like, do your research, do the work, put in work. Like, the problem with like social media, content creation, all this stuff is that they make everything look seamless and easy and smooth, and like it creates this illusion that like it all comes easy. Like, even as like, I even struggle with like the fact that like, I have a lot of, like, in the b-boy community, a lot of people just hate on me because I throw jams because I'm a promoter, right? I'm like, man, you have no idea how much work goes into this stuff, So it's so easy to get caught up in the surface level of like, wow, that looks dope. That must have been easy for you. Or Milli, it must be going really well. Like, no, none of this. All this is super hard.
It's very deceiving.
It's very deceiving, and the whole point is to make it look easy, because that's why, and that's how we cope, and that's how we like, that's b-boys, right? B-boying is exactly that. You try to make hard stuff look easy. You stick your tongue out while you're doing a difficult move. That's the whole point, right? That's style, that's finesse. But it was still really hard. No one knows how many times you had to fall on your face to get that move, and so like, I think that's the most important thing, especially right now where we're starting to have podcasts and people talking about their process. That's so important. But don't forget, like, this isn't like that. Those are real stories. Like, you have to do the work, All
right, Mike, dude, I think that might just be it. That might have just been the mic drop right there. So, dude, I just want to appreciate you for your time. And I mean, oh man, I loved it. I love that. I love every single second of this talk. I do want to leave the floor open to you. If you do have any last words you'd like to drop for the audience, please take it away. If not, then I mean, this is like a great place to
Yeah,
call
man. I think a couple of things I want to mention that I don't have to get super deep into, that if, you know, this gets put out and a lot of b-boys or b-girls hear this, is first off, breaking is a beautiful thing. Keep doing it. Keep enjoying it in your life. Don't ever let it become like a burden to you, whether it's like you're not making enough money or whatever. Just remember, like, breaking is a gift, right? And that being said, we have a lot of work to do as a community, and I think a lot of things I've said here relate to that. Like, we need a better perspective. I think it's important that as a dance community, we address issues like race, and we address issues like sexual assault. I think from my leadership perspective that I've laid out, that it shouldn't be a tough thing. It should be a thing that we welcome and lean into, right? Like, if we want to be, if we want to have the Olympic platform and be really proud of ourselves going there, like, we should all want better for our community and not worry about, or complain about it. Like, to me, it's like, this is an opportunity for us to excise our demons. Let's unite as a community for Black lives and support our Black and brown brothers and sisters and the culture that it stems from, that all breaking stems from. Let's be real about that. Let's support our sisters and the women in our community. Those will make us better as a community. Those will make us better dancers and make us better people. That's all super important. I don't care if it sounds like it's virtue signaling. It's what we got to do. So I hope, like, anyone, if you do put this out, I hope that anyone that listens to this or is in the dance community remembers that it's not just about doing the right thing, which is in and of itself already enough, but it does make you and us better and gives us more opportunities. So remember that. That's just the main thing I wanted to put out there, is that, like, let's not be afraid of talking about these things. Let's do it. You know what I mean?
100%. Let's not be afraid of talking about these things.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. We're going to call it here. Dude, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Make sure you guys follow Mike at Milli Agency. That's MILI Agency on Instagram. Or check out their website. It's pretty dope. It's pretty dope website. I'll say that. And follow Mike at mike.steezie. That's MikeSteezy.
Yes, sir.
And follow me on Clubhouse.
No.
Is it IE?
IE. Yeah.
My bad.
MikeSteezie.
There you go. My bad. Okay. And then lastly, follow him on Clubhouse. What's your Clubhouse at? Same thing.
Yeah. If you're on Clubhouse, follow me. I try to be active.
Yeah, man. I'm excited. I'm really, really excited for what the platform has to bring. So I think it'll be cool that it was great having a one-on-one with you, man. It was super great. I feel like I got to learn a lot and also just exchange. It was amazing. So yeah, this has been Mike and Kai on the Crossroads. You guys take care and find your intention.
Thanks, Kai. Peace.
Hey guys, it's Kai again. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Crossroads Show. If you're really enjoying the content, I would highly implore you on checking out our Crossroads Discord server. It's a beautiful space where we curate content between Nico and I, our previous guests, and our Crossroads listeners. We engage in conversations, people can suggest what they want to see in future episodes and future events. We would love to have you. If you're interested, go ahead and click the link in our Instagram at @thecrossroadz_, or message one of us at The Crossroads, or message myself at Kai Vertigo H. Can't wait to hear from you. Until next time, guys, take care and have a good one. Peace.